Welcome back to the Adventures of the Monad, which will look at life, the universe, and everything. My name is Kazim Kamal Ur-Rahim. In this series, I ask the question, where do we come from, who are we, and where are we going? I post one presentation a week. Please subscribe to my website and hit the bell icon for notifications of future videos. You can also leave comments and join in forum discussions on my website. In the previous presentation, I laid out a framework that categorize the development of the human monad into 5 stages. These categories are not arbitrary. It is possible to define the capacities that are inherent in humanity as it passes through each level. Allied to this was a simple number scale that was used alongside the 5 stages. This reinforced the message of an increase in the consciousness and refinement of the molecules that go to make up the emotional and mental envelopes of humanity. I wish now to go on and drill down into each grade and highlight what exactly constitutes the parameters of that grade. I start with the young stage of human development. I have tabulated that approximately 60% of humanity is currently passing through the young stage of human development. I also indicated that I personally felt that this number is likely to be under 40%, as the proportion of humanity that lives in urban environments has increased dramatically in the last half-century. The defining characteristic of young souls is that they approach their lives with a high degree of physicality and an abundance of negative emotions. They live very much through their senses and are liable to react emotionally before they've had a chance to think about the trigger of their reaction. The monad in such humans resides in the physical permanent atom 49.1. The net result is that the focus of attention of the monad is in and through the physical body. You could say this is the world of feelings. The physical etheric body is sensing its environment and learning from it. This is evident in every monad as it enters into a cycle of reincarnation, and you can see this in the way the young child senses and reacts to its environment. For the young monad, this stage of development does not progress beyond this level, even as it grows to maturity in age. In the youngest of cultures that we can still observe, and they are disappearing fast, the transition from the animal kingdom could be very recent. When I mean recent, it could be as little as a few million years ago. For such humans, the adherence to a prescriptive religion helps them work through some of their innate negative tendencies. A monad focused in its 49.1 physical atom has an emotional consciousness limited to the 48.7 and 48.6 molecular levels. It is such base emotions as fear, anger, pride, envy, and greed that motivate them into action. Higher emotions such as love and compassion develop later. Mental consciousness in such young monads is limited to the 47.7 atom, allowing the monad to exercise simple logic and to imitate thinking. By this I mean that they tend to go along with the group rather than thinking for themselves. Call it herd mentality if you like. Young souls live lives that are dominated by tradition and superstition. They believe what they are told, and they lack the power to reason. Monads may take over 30,000 incarnations to navigate through this stage of their consciousness development. It is a process that we have all been through, and it has laid the foundation for what comes next. It unfortunately also lays down negative traits and habits, as well as a lot of negative karma. This has to be adjusted when we are more able to face the consequences of our previous actions. I now move on to the community stage of human development. Sticking to what I have tabulated, 25% of humanity can be classified as having reached the community stage of development. These souls are characterized by a mix of negative and positive emotions coursing through their emotional envelope. The monad has moved its focus from the 49 one atom to the 48 one atom. This makes the monad a predominantly emotional human being. What matters to them are their emotions, desires, and feelings. Reason begins to develop in the persona, but it is heavily colored by emotionality. The reason for this is that the mental body uses an emotional framework, and the two envelopes become heavily entangled. At the community stage, emotions become more neutral, and the negative traits and habits from their younger incarnations surface and plague them. The way negative emotions are expressed morph. What happened in the past as pure hatred now surfaces as moral judgment and intolerance. One characteristic of a persona operating at level 2 is that when its emotions are inactive, it feels empty and life seems dull. If you observe an emotionally focused person, you notice that their emotions respond to external stimuli. This means that happiness is dependent on a good social life. They are happy when going shopping, consuming alcohol, enjoying music, having sex, or engaging in gossip. I could go on, but you get the picture. Intellect begins to develop in a persona at level 2, but it is not enough for them to truly think for themselves. They are able to decide between options, but are not capable of formulating completely new ideas of their own. Groupthink and the influence of the media hold sway over them. Emotional thinking is dualistic. This is a significant stage of human development, when emotions manifest as pairs of opposites. An obvious example would be love and hate. People functioning at this level tend to have judgmental thoughts and follow organized religions. This includes science, which for many is also a religion, alas. Personas functioning in their lower emotions are content to adopt ready-made belief systems. The majority of the populations of what are termed developed countries are at the second level of the community soul. They generally do not want to stand out and need acceptance from the group they reside within. They have a tendency to be quite vain, materialistic, and fashion conscious. They also display a high degree of group pride, which is described as patriotism. When a persona is at the young stage, its focus is all about me and now. At stage 2, a community-focused soul is still at the me stage, but the circle of inclusion extends to the family and friends. The average person at stage 2 is decidedly normal, being honest, polite, and hardworking. Now we reach the cultured stage. We now come to the last stage of human development that is easily seen in society. They only number approximately 14% of humanity. The focus of these souls has moved higher into the emotional body, and consequently higher emotions are expressed. Such souls are beginning to develop an intellect. The monad is still located in the 48 one permanent atom, but the focus has changed to making intellectual development a priority. The mental body is still entangled with the emotional body, but the balance of power now lies with the intellect emanating from the mental body. The emotions are now being reined in and rightful control established. Cultured souls feel emotions, but do not get carried away by them. The appearance of the intellect in a soul's life instills objectivity, growing beyond selfish and subjective emotionality. Higher emotions develop alongside the intellect, and this results in a more balanced worldview. The community-focused soul is motivated by lower levels of emotionality, centered on the ego and selfishness. The cultured soul is motivated by higher emotionality, which includes such feelings as love and unselfishness. They tend to be caring, good-natured, intelligent, and philosophical. The cultured soul tends to have high ideals, but are rarely protesters or activists, preferring cooperation rather than conflict. Many scientists and intellectuals, along with what I euphemistically call New Agers, function at this level of consciousness. It is at this stage that different parts of the soul incarnate into different lives to learn about higher emotions or to develop intellect. I have spoken already about the fact that only about 5% of a soul ever usually takes incarnation. The guardian angel now has enough soul consciousness developed within the causal envelope to pick out skill sets. These benefit the monad more favorably in any particular incarnation. In this way, a scientific incarnation may be followed by one where the soul chooses to express a highly spiritual life. It is at this stage of human development that the soul is able to subtly influence the persona. The lowest molecular level of the causal body, housing 47 3 molecules, can now influence the mental body through intuition. This I have previously described as an inner knowing. This level of soul expression is above intellectual thought and allows the persona to express ideas in an all-encompassing manner. This is known as universal thinking. This is just a nascent development in the life of a persona, but it is a constructive start that leads to greater things. I have also mentioned that a monad is subjectively conscious half a plane of matter above where it is objectively conscious. This allows a soul functioning at the third stage of human development to receive impressions from the unity plane, also known as the fifth kingdom. This develops compassion in the monad. This grounds itself in the emotional body, but should not be seen as being an emotion in itself. It is a higher expression of true love and understanding, which is the hallmark of the fifth, the unity kingdom. These higher energies, cascading down from the causal and unity planes, are there to refine the emotional body, which is the main aim of the monad as it passes through the cultured phase of its evolution. It should be noted that these energies can cause imbalance in the etheric body, which leads to the disruption of the nervous system. This may account for the increased level of anxiety and depression being experienced by many souls incarnate today in modern societies. At a later phase in the monad's passage through the cultured stage of development, it is not uncommon for a soul to have a series of incarnations that exhibit strong mystical and clairvoyant tendencies. This is more likely if the soul has practiced yoga or magic in previous incarnations. Energies from the unity plane have a tendency to overstimulate the emotional body. This can induce raptures and ecstatic feelings. This has the unfortunate outcome that the persona mistakes these events triggered by its own superconsciousness as the presence of God. This sometimes goes by the name of the Messiah complex. Such souls are caught up in their own emotional illusions. Mysticism and spirituality belong to the cultured stage of evolution, and the study of esoteric starts to appear in the next phase of development. This I have named the compassionate phase. Which thinkers would you classify here? Now we are getting into the really rarefied levels of human development. We have reached the compassionate stage of consciousness. Less than 1% of humanity expresses this in their being. They are characterized by having a very high intellect and a very compassionate nature. This is not to be mistaken for emotionality. The monad has now moved into the 47-4 permanent mental molecule. Now the persona dominates proceedings from the mental plane, and the emotional body is brought under strict observance and control. We now learn to think for ourselves and develop our own beliefs, opinions, and standards. These are formulated independently from those projected by the media. Compassionate people see through emotional illusions and mental fictions that taint other people's perceptions of reality. Compassionate souls realize the insignificance and futility of chasing materialism, wealth, and fame. The persona is now able to engage in rational and impartial thoughts. This has become possible as the mental body has managed to disentangle itself from the emotional body. The mental body begins to associate more strongly with the causal body. This increases its receptivity to intuitional and inspirational thoughts. Subjective causal consciousness, also known as soul contact, develops through the compassionate stage of development. It is, however, hard to start off with. This is because there is so much mental clutter cascading down into the physical etheric brain. The soul must learn to control the powerful mental activities coursing through its mental envelope. These thought forms need to be trained to become tools of the monad that wants to now focus through its causal body. Initially, mental consciousness acts as a transformer. It concretizes causal ideas. It slowly learns to overcome its inherent egotistical nature and step aside to allow causal ideas to flow freely into the brain. It is difficult for the brain to understand causal ideas. One way to facilitate this process is to meditate regularly. This greatly speeds up the process. The need to explain great philosophical questions such as the meaning of life and to understand the nature of reality becomes the primary focus of the monad when it reaches the fourth stage of human development. The persona has now become aware of the limitations of the fields of science and the fictitious nature of religions. It now seeks to develop its own understanding of the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Souls at the compassionate stage now have an insatiable appetite for any kind of knowledge that will develop their understanding. They may study religious texts, but this does not make them religious. They are often skeptical or atheists, choosing to believe nothing rather than a collection of religious fallacies. This is the reason why esoteric knowledge appeals to them. Halfway through the compassionate stage, the monad satisfies its thirst for knowledge and then sets about applying that knowledge to achieve higher states of consciousness. The recent influx of cosmic energy has accelerated the development of the fifth and the sixth kingdoms, which together make up the planetary hierarchy. People at the compassionate stage can also accelerate their development through special training. This occurs on the causal plane while asleep or through meditation. Waking consciousness may not know this is occurring, but your metaconsciousness does. Now we come to the last stage that the monad passes through in the human kingdom. This is the stage of enlightenment. The chances of you ever meeting someone who has progressed to the final stage of humanity is very low. They number less than 1 in a million. Such souls have reached enlightenment and are characterized by an overwhelming sense of peace and joy, wisdom and unity. This state cannot be understood, it has to be experienced. Enlightenment occurs at the start of the fifth stage of human development, when the monad bridges the gap between the first and second triads. The monad now moves up to the 47-4 mental atom. This is a huge achievement. The achievement is called enlightenment because the light of the soul overwhelms and subjugates the persona stroke ego. This lower body is relegated to playing a subservient role. I referenced this in a previous presentation to the peace that surpasses understanding. Philippians chapter 4 verse 7. The usual ceaseless chatterings of the mind no longer color our perception. We no longer have a judgmental commentary running in the background. This leaves us free to be and experience life purely and directly. Causal consciousness is radically different from anything a normal person has ever experienced. It is characterized by a feeling of unity and identification with everyone and everything. Some authors describe enlightenment when they say, "I disappeared." This indicates that they are redefining enlightenment, not reaching it. Enlightenment involves centering your monad in the 47-1 atom or above, and this requires lifetimes of effort. You cannot develop muscles without exercising. Fully developed causal consciousness allows you to acquire information about any event in history and access causal ideas from members of the 5th and 6th kingdom. Remember, the monad is still in the 4th kingdom. You can now also directly influence physical and etheric matter, enabling you to move objects, known as telekinesis. It is possible to levitate bodies. This is done through the manipulation of causal energy through the brow chakra. This creates a cause, which gives rise to an effect on the physical plane. You can see through solid matter and zoom into objects on a microscopic and subatomic level. You are now also able to project an image of yourself to remote locations and describe the environment and events clearly. There is also the ability to objectively perceive the etheric, emotional, mental, and causal worlds. This allows the soul to see other people's auras, thoughts, and emotions. It is one thing seeing these things, it is another thing understanding what they mean. Causal consciousness gives you this understanding. Causal consciousness allows an amazing level of understanding about the nature of reality. However, knowledge is not infallible, as knowledge has to be stepped down through the mental body and mistranslations can occur. I wish to point out that non-enlightened people are not new people every time they incarnate, but neither are they the same person that incarnated in their previous lifetime. The new persona of an incarnation is a blend of attributes from the soul, using 5% of its total experiences to date. Enlightened people incarnate 100% of their causal body, so they are the same person from life to life. This allows them to have continuity of consciousness and past life recall. It should also be noted that if you have 100% of your soul energy present, this is a dramatic increase in soul energy at your disposal. I wish to remind you at the end of this discussion on the 5 stages of human development just how long this process takes. The average person takes 182,500 incarnations to enlighten themselves. This is from the point of causalization from the 3rd to the 4th kingdoms, all the way up to enlightenment. This is if they follow the herd and make no specific effort to move their game forward. How long do you want to take? In the next presentation, I wish to start to look at the science of enlightenment. How does it occur? What processes are occurring? And what needs to be developed to complete the process? If you wish to read a translation of this presentation or leave a comment, link to my websites are in the description box below. Thank you.